This is the Bay Area's news station. KRON 4 News Weekend starts now.
Still ahead on KRON 4 News Weekend, in the wake of last week's shooting in Las Vegas, we'll sit down with a men's health expert to talk about the links between men, depression, and gun violence. That's coming up after the break. It has been a week now since that horrific mass shooting in Las Vegas, and so many of us still trying to come to grips with that tragedy. Dr. Will Courtney is a Oakland psychotherapist. He's the author of the book Dying to Be Men and the founder of SadDaddy.com. It's an online resource for dads who are depressed. And he joins me this morning to talk about this situation. And Will, first of all, thanks for joining us. And secondly, what happened in Las Vegas has now turned into a national debate about gun violence. But it turns out that gun violence is unfortunately a very common occurrence in the U.S.
You're right. Yeah, it's actually shocking, Marty, that each day in the United States, nearly 100 people die from guns, and another 200 people are injured by them. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that should get us to start talking about gun violence in this country. And then we do, you know, after a tragedy like this, but the conversation always turns to gun control, as we've been hearing in the news. Right. And gun control today means banning automatic weapons and now these bump stocks that turn guns into automatic weapons. And the problem is that as well intended as those efforts are, they're not going to really have an impact on gun violence overall in this country.
Why not?
So we have to look at the numbers. So 2 out of 3 of those people killed each day, those nearly 100 people killed, 2 out of 3 of them are suicides. People don't use automatic weapons to kill themselves. Most of them use handguns. Then another third of those, roughly, are homicides. And even murderers don't use automatic weapons. They too mostly use handguns. The other couple of deaths are accidental deaths. So banning automatic weapons is not going to really address the real problem of gun violence in this country. The other problem with our conversations about gun control is we always neglect to talk about gender. Any real effective answer to the problem of gun violence in this country needs to begin with a question about gender. Gun violence is male violence. And again, if we come back to these numbers and look at them, out of those nearly 100 people who are killed each day, nearly 9 out of 10 of those killed are male. More than 9 out of 10 people who kill other people are male. And nearly 9 out of 10 people who kill themselves are male. So, you know, we know this old truism, guns don't kill people, people do, but it's only partly true, really.
Men do.
Men do.
You have a phrase that you use called toxic masculinity. Right. Can you explain what that is?
Well, that's part of what teaches men to deny their pain and their sadness. It's part of, when we think about toxic masculinity, we're really thinking about the need to have power, dominance, and control over others. But if we think about toxic masculinity more generally, it really speaks to the problem that men are not allowed to experience pain and express that in this country. So this is one of the problems with these shootings, is we know that mental health problems are oftentimes behind those. So if we just look at those, most of those people who die from guns each day, those 2 out of 3, most of those are suicides. And those suicides are with men who were depressed. We know that they were depressed at the time that they killed themselves. But the problem is they weren't effectively treated, because if they were, they wouldn't have killed themselves.
So you're advocating more mental health screenings?
Absolutely. We need
treatment?
So men are far less likely than women to be treated for the mental health problems or depression that they have in this country. And they're also taught to deny their pain and hide their pain. So this is what we hear so often after suicides or shootings, which often include suicides, as it did in this case with Stephen Paddock. Chances are he was depressed. And we know that he was prescribed Valium for anxiety, which often goes along with depression. So what's happening is that these guys are not getting helped. And this starts early in our lives, Marty. We're taught very early. We tend to deny boys pain, tell them to shake it off.
Yep.
We know parents are less likely to see pain and sadness in their sons than their daughters, and misinterpret sadness is anger. So boys learn, okay, well, I can't express pain and sadness, but it's okay to express anger. And that's what we see in men.
It's the anger is the lashing out that we see. And we see it as early as early childhood.
We do.
With the bullying and things like this that we see.
Exactly, exactly.
I want to shift gears here just for a second. How do you counsel fathers to explain this type of violence to their children?
Oh, that's a great question, because it's so important that as fathers we are able to talk about our thoughts about this and also our feelings about it, to be able to express and model for especially our sons, but our daughter as well, how to kind of cope with feelings like this. So it's certainly important to broach the topic, depending on the age of the kid. You know, some kids it may not really register for them yet, and you don't want to push it. For older kids, you want to find out what they've learned. They may have gotten a lot of misinformation, so find out what they know, and then talk about the facts with them, sort of lay it out, be truthful and honest about it. And then you want to be sure to really listen to, especially again with our sons, listen to hear if you can hear any anxiety or worry, because oftentimes that's what we'll miss in our sons. And then most importantly, you want to reassure kids, let them know that you're going to do everything you possibly can to keep them safe,
protect them.
And to protect them, right?
Dr. Will Courtney, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Marty.
We'll be right back.